Hi everybody, it's Thomas here from Thomas Fitzgerald Photography, and today I have another Capture One quick tip for you. So, one of the things that kind of annoys me about Capture One, as much as I love the software, there's one tiny little problem with it that is a bit frustrating at times, and that is the way the software does previews. So, as with most raw conversion software, as you edit your image, the preview updates in real time, but it uses a caching system, much like Lightroom and most other software, to actually display the image while you work, so in order to keep it real time and it's not rendering every time. And I found that the previews in Capture One can be a little soft sometimes, especially when you're working with a vertical image. So you're probably not going to see this on the video too well, but if I find a vertical image, you can see it's actually a little bit softer than it necessarily needs to be. Now, this depends greatly on the resolution of your screen, the resolution of the image, and various other factors. However, if you find that this is something that bothers you, there is actually a simple solution for it. It requires a little bit of setup, and this only works in Capture One Pro. It doesn't work with the free express versions, but I'm going to show you what to do. Once you have it set up, it's actually quite useful for a number of different things, and it basically uses the recipe proofing option. So what recipe proofing does is it allows you to proof your recipes. So if you are familiar with output recipes in Capture One, it's how you output your images. So you set up various different settings. So you want to output as JPEG, you want to scale it to a certain size, and so on. And what recipe proofing does is it basically previews this. So you get a preview of the compression, any color space changes that might occur when you're exporting. It's actually quite a useful feature. However, if you set up a recipe that is basically the size of your screen and then turn on recipe proofing, it will actually render out what the image will properly look like. So it gives you a fully rendered sharp image with everything rendered. Because one of the other things that Capture One does is it doesn't render certain things like chromatic aberration correction. It only partially renders it. And also you won't really see sharpening settings properly, and grain either will be a little softer than it actually would be when you output it. Now, again, while this is a flaw of Capture One, all software has this issue to an extent. For example, Lightroom sometimes can be a little softer than what your output might actually end up being. Again, it all depends on your screen resolution. I've also found that some of these issues are a bit less with if you're running on a high DPI display or a Retina display on a Mac. So basically what you need to do is set up a recipe, an output recipe, just specifically for your proofing. You don't have to actually have it activated, you just have to have it selected. So here I have one set up, and if you see over here, I have in the basic section, I have width and height, and I have set this so that it is smaller than this, because this trick only works if it's scaled down smaller than the viewing area. So to find the viewing area, to find what size it is, what you need to do is actually measure it. So I'm on the Mac, and I just went to the Mac App Store. I just did a quick search for ruler, and this is the first one that came up. It was a free one, so that's what I'm using for this. And so if I bring up the screen ruler, I can see that my height is 1250 and my width is a little over 1850. So it's you actually need to scale it down slightly as well. So it needs to be slightly smaller than the viewing area. So in this case, I've set it up to 1850 by 1200. But to show you what to do, I'll create a new one. So just call it any recipe at all and call it screen proof. Okay, and then we want, for scale, we want width by height, and we want pixels, and we want this by 1850, 1200. That's fine. So once you have your recipe created, I'm just going to turn it off because we're not going to export this, but we just need it selected. So then the next thing you want to do is turn on screen proofing. So the next thing you want to do is turn on recipe proofing, which is this little pair of glasses up here. So once you turn that on, you'll see it's scaling down and it now properly renders the output. And again, if I use this on, say, a vertical image, if I just find them quickly, it will also give you a much sharper image. Now again, you're probably not going to be able to see the difference here on the video, but if I turn it off, you can see it's actually much softer, and then on, it's nice and crisp. And you can actually continue editing while you're in this mode, but it will be a little bit slower. And so what I normally do is I turn it on when I want to check stuff, or if I find that something looks a little soft, I'll turn it on. And that will actually give me a very accurate look at what the output's going to be. And it will properly render everything like chromatic aberration correction and all that as well. So it's a quick way to double check things. So one other thing about previews in Capture One that you should know as well is if you go into the preferences and we go over to, I think it's image, you see preview image size. So the recommendation for this is to set this one size larger than your screen. So in this case, my screen is 2880, so I could set this to one size larger, which would be 3840. So I have this set to 5120, but I could actually just set this to 3480, and that would decrease the preview size a little. So one other thing about previews is it doesn't actually use JPEGs for previews, so that's why some people have complained to me that the size of their catalog file is quite large because of the previews. And the reason for that is, unlike Lightroom, it doesn't actually use JPEGs for previews. It uses something similar to Lightroom's Smart Previews, because you can actually continue to edit if your original images become detached from the library. Like, for example, if you had an external drive and you unplugged it. So that's why the catalog size is slightly larger, and that's why you have no control over, say, the quality of the image. You only have control over the size. So again, the recommendation is that you have it at least one step higher than your screen size. So again, I had it at 5120, so I'm just going to leave it at that for the moment. But I could drop it down one. I've lots of screen reels. I have lots of hard drive space, so it doesn't really matter. So if you had been having problems with the previews in Capture One and you found that was slightly annoying, that their image appeared softer than you thought it should, that's how you get around it. And again, it doesn't work in the Express version because it doesn't have recipe proofing and it doesn't have multiple recipes, so this only works in the Pro version. But the advantage of it is that it does give you the best possible preview of what your output's going to look like. It's probably the most accurate, even compared to other applications. Because, as I said, most applications have this problem to a various degree. In some things you wouldn't notice it, and others you might. And again, it will depend greatly on the resolution of your screen. And if you're using a high DPI display, you probably don't have this as much. So it's up to you to decide if you think you need to do this, but it's certainly worth giving it a try and see if it helps your workflow at all. Okay, that has been a quick tip for Capture One, and check out the rest of my Capture One videos. If you like this channel, subscribe, like this video, and feel free to share it. And thanks for watching. See you next time.